Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. Today we have an incredible guest. She was one of our first guests ever on the podcast, and she is a dear friend of mine. I'm going to give just a quick intro because I want to get right to our conversation. Today we're going to be talking with Carolyn Marie Wilkins, and she has a new book that has just come out called Murder at the Wham Bam Club. It is a period piece set in the 20s, the roaring 20s, and it is such a fun murder mystery with mediumship and so much more woven in. So we're going to really dive in and talk about her book, but I also asked her a lot of questions for anyone who is an aspiring writer of any kind. If you feel like you've got a book in you or just like short stories or just wondering how the writing process works, I asked Carolyn so many questions about all of that, and she even has some exciting additional little extras to share with us. So let's dive right in as we open up this conversation about Murder at the Wham Bam Club with the incredible author, medium, jazz musician, and my friend, Carolyn Wilkins. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back or welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I am not going to waste any time before introducing our guest today. Those of you that have been with the pod since day one will remember her as one of our inaugural guests. She's an incredible friend. Miss Carolyn Marie Wilkins is the author of Murder at the Wham Bam Club, the first in the Psychic and Soul Food Mystery series. Her other books include Death at a Seance, which was super good, Melody for Murder, and Mojo for Murder. Highly recommend all of them. Carolyn's stories have appeared in Festive Mayhem and Wolfsbane for the best New England short stories of 2023. She is a professor at Berklee College of Music online and has represented our nation as a jazz ambassador for the U.S. State Department. An initiated priestess of Yemaya, the African goddess of motherhood, Carolyn is also a psychic medium and a Reiki master. There's nothing this woman cannot do. Help me welcome Miss Carolyn Marie Wilkins. How are you?
Oh my gosh, Joy. It's such a joy and a pleasure to see you. How fun. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm so grateful to you for being here. So last time you were with us, we learned all about your history, how you became a medium, you as a jazz musician. You did a wonderful share of trance mediumship piano healing for us. So highly recommend everyone. I'll link it in the show notes. People can go back and check it. You had already been an author, and now you have a new book that's just released that I'm so excited to talk about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, and just in case,
Yeah, there
here
it
it
is.
is. It's called Murder at the Wham Bam Club. And I have to say, I'm super excited. It's kind of rolled together all
Yeah.
of my interests of being a psychic, loving jazz, writing, and of course, a murder mystery. What could be more fun?
Well, that's, I think, one of the most beautiful things, just knowing you over all these years, the way that you weave all of your experience. And I want to really just let everyone know, I'm going to try my very best not to give any spoilers about the book, but we'll dive in enough that I'm hoping everyone will get as excited about it as I am. I
Oh,
just finished it. I
okay.
want to start by kind of talking about Miss Nola, who is the
Huh.
heroine of our story.
Good.
And she really is a representation of such a compelling mix of like intuition and intellect and resilience.
Hmm.
How did her character first come to you, and how much of her is drawn from your own life experience as a musician, a woman of color, a medium? I
Uh,
want to know everything.
oh, Joy, what a great question.
She's a great character.
Uh, well, I wanted to write a psychic character because, of course, I'm a psychic, but at the same time, I did not want her to be like a super psychic where she knew everything and, because then there would be no mystery to the book. She would know everything. She'd know who all the bad guys were, and
Right.
it would sort of not be any fun. So she had to be this combination of both knowing, but at the same time, innocent a little bit and
Yeah.
looking, seeking. Plus, she's not quite 21. She's like 20 and a half or something.
Yeah.
So she's fairly young, but she's also feisty. She did run away from her small town and elope with a soldier during right before World War I.
Yeah.
But her husband was killed in the war, and now she's back home in the small town where she grew up, which she kind of likes, but she kind of doesn't like. She's lived in Harlem, up in New York City. She's seen the bright lights in the big
Yeah.
city. So she's a little mix of both, a home girl, but also with a little bit of sophistication and a lot of spice to her. She's not afraid to sort of speak her mind when things bother her. And sometimes that gets her in a little bit of trouble also.
Well, and I will say, just for everyone who hasn't read it yet, the way that it's written, you really get that flavor and that sense that she doesn't have all the experience in the world, but she has, moved away from home at one point. That's where we're finding her in the story too, as we step into it. Will you just kind of set that scene a little bit with the time period? And, you just said that her husband has just passed away when we're finding her. She's just kind of returned home in this really crossroads of a circumstance for her. So will you
Right.
talk a little bit about why you're so impassioned about that time period, and also just set the scene for us a little bit?
Yes. So the book is set in the roaring 20s, okay? Just almost exactly 100 years ago, 1922. And for those who maybe are not so deep into the history, they had just passed, Congress had just passed a law called prohibition that made liquor illegal. They made all the bars close. You could not serve liquor and stuff. And the end result of this was that people drank more than ever. The goal had been to eliminate drinking and stuff, but sometimes when you ban things, it makes it actually worse. So
Yeah.
everyone and their brother was breaking the law in some way or another. People were making like whiskey in their bathtub. There were all these places called speakeasies where you would go to get your illegal alcohol. And
Yeah.
along with the illegal alcohol, many of these places also had jazz, which
Yeah.
was the hotcha music of the time, right?
Well, and as we're recording this, the Michael B. Jordan movie Sinners was just out at the beginning of the summer, and that's very juke joint-esque, maybe not exact same
Absolutely. No,
period, but yeah, very similar
it's
right in there.
very similar. I That was a fortuitous circumstance. Who knew
Right,
that
how
that movie
crazy.
would come out? And that movie also has a lot of African folk magic, if you
Yep.
will, some of the magical practices, reading the bones and hoodoo, which is also in my book as well.
Yep.
So my character comes back to this town, which was kind of a sleepy, boring town when she grew up there. But now, due to the fact that the war is over, there's a boom in need for labor, and a lot of African Americans are moving up from the South to come
Yeah.
live in this place, which is at the very tip of Illinois, the very southern tip, right on the Mississippi River. And in this place called Agate, which is, by the way, a fictional place, don't look for it on the map because it's not there. It's kind of a cross between Cairo, Illinois, which is a real place, and Edwardsville, Indiana, which is another real place. But it's
Yeah.
this, I made a fictional place, but folks are moving up there and they're looking for work and they're coming in droves. And with them, they are bringing both a labor force, but it's also with them is coming um, naive young girls who have never had any experience in the city, and they maybe 14, 15 years old, and they've just been in the
Yeah.
country and now they move to the city. And where you have that kind of population and that level of illegal activity, you also
Yeah.
have crime, and you have these pimps who were basically seducing young girls and then turning them into prostitutes. So
Yeah.
um, all of this is going on. So the town is not nearly as sleepy and boring as it was when Nola grew up there. On
Yeah.
the other hand, it's also a lot more dangerous. And there are gangsters, and there's rum runners, and just a whole lot of crazy stuff there.
Well, I
So,
have to say, I one of the things I love about this book, I told you, I use an app that reads the book out loud to me, just because it helps me process and it allows me to use some of my gifts and see the pictures myself, like an old fashioned read does. And I just felt like this book is such a jewelry box of all these beautiful different, you were saying you've got the beautiful, boom of industry, but then you've got the underbelly that's coming in, and then you have this incredible, very fiery jazz component, and the way you use the language is really revealing. And I mean, sometimes very sharp, sometimes very moving. There's themes of justice and race inequality and mediumship and just the dynamics of relationships. So it's so layered that I really love it, because just like you were saying, all of these things are happening at once, and it doesn't feel overwhelming at all in the writing. It's just so nuanced that I'm so
oh,
proud of you, friend.
thank you. Oh,
It's
Joy, thank
amazing.
you so much. And yeah, you really got it. And at the same time that all this craziness is going on, um, my character also works part time at a catering company.
Yes.
She's moved back home to live with her aunt, who is a bona fide hoodoo practitioner, what they
Yeah.
call a conjure woman. And if you saw Sinners, you know how the woman in the movie kind of threw the bones and did that.
Hmm.
Her aunt is that kind of a woman. Uh, uh,
These are some of the things I loved, because I know some of this work, and as you're saying, I'm like, oh, that's right. Like, that's because you do have the personal experience and the understanding of all of it. So I love the way you weave it in such like a realistic way.
Yes, thank you. And so my character works for this catering company. And because she works at catering company, first of all, I get to talk about food, which is always fun, right? And as caterers, they can enter a lot of different
Yeah.
homes and different places where they otherwise would not be able to go. So,
Right.
among the places where she goes to work as a caterer is a woman who is a very wealthy spiritualist. We had to have a spiritualist in there because, we're
Of
psychic
course.
mediums. We had to do it. But spiritualism was also very much on the rise in the 1920s. Why?
Yeah.
Because they had just had a war, and so many young men had been taken from the planet so young, right?
Yeah.
And people were sort of searching for answers. And among the things that happened was that they went to see mediums and psychics to try to get answers. And some
Yeah.
of those mediums were ethical, and some of them not so much.
Yeah.
So that is also a piece of the story as well.
Well, okay, this brings me to one of my many questions on my list. You're a medium, as we know,
Yeah.
and Nola, as you mentioned, is clearly gifted and starting to uncover some of those gifts herself. How did you approach writing the spiritual or psychic elements so they felt really authentic, like I was saying, to our actual mediumship experience, but also grounded and not too over the top for readers that, maybe it's not their vein of belief, for example?
That's a great question. And only another medium would ask me that question because, yes, I'm sure you have also read books or seen movies in which the characters were psychic or whatever, and they would do stuff, and you're like, really? Like,
Yeah,
not so much. Meh, meh.
exactly.
So I wanted to make it realistic, yet
Yeah.
at the same time, I found that in order to move the story along and bring the drama, we couldn't have maybe like when you do a real mediumship reading, you get some right answers, but you also get some wrong answers, and
Yeah.
you stumble around a little bit before you're able to bring the message and all that. In this case, I had to have the characters get to the point pretty quickly
Right.
because we have to move the story forward.
Yeah.
But I did try to bring at least some realism, and for Nola particularly, because as I say, she's an apprentice psychic. She's not
Yeah.
a
She's like an
full on,
accidental psychic
yeah,
almost.
she's not a full on 100%, bad character.
Yeah.
She's still,
Unfolding. Yeah. She's just
yeah,
learning.
unfolding.
Well,
So
you and I are both trance mediums, and I really loved how you described it. So, we do get to experience a couple different versions of seance in the story.
yes,
And in one of those experiences, the way it's described is as though the person was moving through water, and it was though they were deep underwater in a place of profound darkness. And then all of a sudden, they had an awareness of the emotions as they were channeling a message. That felt very real to me as a trance medium. So, I
yes,
loved that.
yes, yes. I think if you've ever been there and done it, I know you've probably had experiences like that. And I was happy to be able to share those little glimpses
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Well, and the psychic side obviously is not the only piece of it. It just is, I think it's a connector to the murder piece of it. But
Mhm.
music, jazz plays so much of a part of this, not just only as a metaphor, but also within the structure. And I love the way that the music really pulses through this book. And we even get to, I feel like I'm hearing it and feeling it when the artists are playing or
Cool.
expressing their music within the story, which is so cool. And the music almost acts like this second heartbeat for me when I'm reading the story or experiencing the story. In what ways did jazz, from your perspective as a very profound jazz artist yourself, both the sounds and the symbols, how did that influence, I don't know, everything from like the rhythm and pacing of the book to like the emotional arcs of the story? Because it's really deep in there.
Thank you. And I think at least some of that just comes because
Yeah.
it's who I am. But that said, I really wanted to make particularly the scenes in the Wham Bam Club.
Hmm.
And by the way, my publisher did the cover art for this is
Okay.
just amazing to
It's
me.
very cool.
It captures it, but there's such a life and a vibrancy in the club and in the music and in
Hmm.
the interaction between the musicians and the audience, people
Yeah.
shouting out to the musicians shouting back. All of this is makes it very vibrant. And I
Yeah.
will say also that I did write 3 songs that are sort of go along with the book. And
Okay. I was going to ask you about this, so I'm glad we're talking about it.
yes, I'm going to give you a link to share with
Oh,
your
awesome.
listeners, because they can download the songs. And they were just kind of jazzy songs that to me felt like one of them, actually, the lyrics are actually in the book. And then I took those lyrics and put them to music. And then I wrote a
Yeah.
couple of other ones as
Some
well.
racy songs in that book too. Love it.
And
Roaring 20s, right?
well, and this was the thing, it was in many ways very similar to our own era, in that people were just letting it all hang out.
Yeah.
They'd been through a war. By the way, there'd been a big pandemic.
Yeah.
Much like our pandemic, they had the great flu of 1918, and like thousands of people died.
Yep.
And I think the general mood was, we're just going to party till we drop, because who knows, you could drop anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well drop while you're partying,
Well, and that's one of the many layers, is this dichotomy between, I mean, just like you said, how we have it now, the strict kind of religious right of it, and then if we're going to be doing this moonshine and being in this place we're not supposed to be at a time we're not supposed to be here anyways, like, let's really let it loose. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And so and there was also pretty, not in agate where I write this, it was not a legal separation of the races, but by custom. Basically, Black people stayed in one part of town.
Yeah.
They shopped only in certain stores. They did only certain things. White people stayed over here. They went to their places. But in places like the Wham Bam Club, it was all bets are off, because it was all completely illegal anyway, and
Yeah.
people mixed and mingled, with, in this case, fatal results. But I'm not going to get
Yeah.
we don't want to spoil it.
Well, and these are some of the undercurrents that, anyone who's sensitive enough, or even just paying any sort of attention, knows that we have these undercurrents in our current society. And you do
Yes.
such a great job of
Yes.
The way that they're marinated in as like an underpinning of what's happening in the book. It really beautifully weaves into its proverbial tapestry. It confronts systemic racism, police corruption, gendered violence in a way that feels somehow both timely and timeless. So I don't know how you're doing that. Is there a particular news event or something that struck you in a personal story or a moment in history that became almost like the spark to ignite you into writing this book?
That's a great question. I've always been interested in history,
Yeah.
and African American history in particular. And my family, in this period in the 1920s, when I had done some research on my family, I discovered that both my father's people and my mother's people had lived in Evansville, Indiana, at
Oh,
this
interesting.
exact same time. They didn't know each other then, but they were there. And Evansville, had a lot of the same crazy corruption and wildness that I write about.
Yeah.
And so I've often thought, I wonder what they thought. I wonder how they dealt with it. I wonder, you try to imagine like your
Rock.
grandparents as people in their 20s. What would it have been like to have moved? My grandmother moved there from like Alabama. What would that
Right.
have been like, to hit that? Was it,
Yeah,
so
through her eyes.
I've
Yeah.
always been really curious about that time period. And yeah, it's just
Not
curiosity, I guess.
not only are you incredible, but you have this really incredible history of family people that are
Mm.
connected with you. Are any of the musicians in your lineage part of that two family line that was in that area around that time?
Yes, they my grandfather's people, they actually were not so much in Evansville. They were a little bit to the, I think it's the east. But they were in southern Indiana.
Okay.
And yes, I have one, I guess he's a great uncle who actually was pretty famous jazz musician who played with Count Basie, if you know who that is. He's
Of
like a
course.
famous band leader.
If
And
anyone doesn't, they need to look up Count Basie because
exactly.
that's the bare minimum you need to know.
So my uncle, Ernie Wilkins, actually did the arrangements for Count Basie and played
Wow.
saxophone with him for many years. So, yeah, all of those kind of things, I've always felt a deep connection, both
Yeah.
just because I'm a musician, but also because it's an ancestral connection as well.
So cool. Did you feel like when you were writing and kind of exploring and expanding the characters that you were almost blending or tuning in for the souls of the loved ones in your line and around that time period?
I definitely felt supported. And you know, as a
That's cool.
medium, you know how that is. You're starting
Yeah.
to write and they're talking to you.
Yes.
And they definitely let me know they wanted certain things. And on the other hand, they let me know they did not want certain things.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, in terms of how I was going to portray the characters, and that there should always be compassion for all the characters, even the worst ones.
Yeah, I
Um,
noticed that. You showed layers to even the most challenging
that's
characters.
right. That was
Yeah.
very important to them. And but I do want to say to your listeners,
Yeah.
we've been saying all this heavy stuff about the book. I
I feel like
just
it's exciting.
it is exciting,
Yeah.
but I also want to let them know that the book is actually really light-hearted,
Yeah.
and it's a murder mystery. It's not a there's no like really blood and gore. Obviously people get
Right.
killed, but they're
Those
killed.
things happen outside of our awareness as the reader. We just know that this has happened, but we don't have a lot of the
Thank
P's
you.
and Q's about it.
There's
So no
no
worries on that front.
body parts and
Oh, no, none of
you
that.
know, and it's not that kind of book. And there is at the heart of it a puzzle to be solved,
Yeah.
and you, the reader, have the opportunity to, um, like any good mystery, follow along and find the trail of clues that I've
Right.
left and see if you figure out who did it, you know.
Well, and that is part of the fun as we're kind of bouncing from, I always feel like we're more or less, for the most part, tagging along with Nola everywhere she goes through the story, and she's bouncing from her, the places she's visiting and the friends she knows there and the
Mm,
conversations. And then
mm.
there's the, you know, undercurrents of things happening in the background. And I feel like, yeah, like you said, with any good murder mystery, it's you're looking at this person and you're wondering if, oh, wait, are we supposed to be looking over here? Is this too
That's
obvious?
it.
Is this,
That's
yeah.
it.
So wheels are
That's it.
churning for sure, which is a lot of fun.
Well, that's what I'm glad to hear that, Joy, because that is definitely what I want. And yes, it has history, and yes,
Yeah.
it has drama, and it has all these other things. But at the heart of it, hopefully, it's a fun and entertaining story that
Yeah.
will leave people smiling at the end.
Okay, well, you and I both spent a good amount of our time in Boston. You're still there. For me, I feel like those components I was talking about, um, the way it is in the book, there's the story itself, right? This mystery we're uncovering and all the components and all the players. And I really feel like it reminds me of when I see a movie about Boston or that takes place in Boston, that they get it just right. The clothing's just right and the accents are just right, and because it's all happening all around, and you don't have to necessarily make it center stage, but you just notice it as part of the way things are moving in the background, the way this person looks this way and not that way, or can go here and not there. And
That's
so
right.
I feel like all of those extra components, that layering, really grounds us into like a real scene is how it feels. It doesn't feel like a made up place. It feels like a
Good.
place that we've all heard about in stories or movies or
Mm,
history, or even
mm.
watching, a lot of the documentaries that have come up over the years. And so I feel like we're just getting to somehow enter through a little doorway into this window of a world.
Well, that was my hope in writing it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. That really makes me happy, because I think if you talk to any author, this is what we want, is that it's a fictional world, but it needs to feel real within the boundaries that we create, so
Yeah.
that you, the reader, can kind of really go in and experience things, So great. That's really
Yeah.
good.
Well, in a time period too that we have some references for, but the way it rounds out. And then I think that the psychic and seance component is just, it really is such a cool way of moving the story forward and allowing details to be revealed. And so that part of it is, I think,
Oh,
really, really juicy.
well, thank you so much. I
Yeah, of
really am so
course.
happy you enjoyed it.
I really did. I
Yay.
have some other questions that are more like for those that are budding writers. Because I feel like
Okay.
I know in our audience, we have a lot of, I feel like so many sensitives have some sort of book bubbling inside of us for
Yes.
some period of time, whether
Yes.
we ever decide to address it or not.
That's true.
Um, yeah. So, what do you feel like? I mean, you have such a rich history with all of your undertakings that we went through in your bio. And then there's even more than that, is the truth. How did you decide, like, okay, it's time to bring these stories to the world that have clearly been inside of you, even in the earlier books?
Oh, wow. Yeah, great question, Joy. I first, when I was first writing, I wrote as a little kid, and then I went into music. And as you know, when you go into something like music or athletics or whatever it
Yeah.
is like that, you go so deeply that you basically don't have time to do anything else. So
Yeah.
for a long time, I only just did music. And so I was teaching at Berkeley, and Berkeley produces textbooks that they sell. And they asked me if I would write a book um, to teach singers how to prepare for playing in a band, right? So I
That's
thought,
cool.
oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book, but what I found was it was far more fun writing the little hypothetical anecdotes and the little stories than it
Yeah.
was actually writing the exercises and the musical piece. And I thought, oh, maybe this is something I'd like to do. So that was like the first sort of, it gave me a permission to
Okay.
say, oh, okay, maybe you can write stuff. And then I had a really burning story inside that I wanted to tell about my family. And this was
Mm.
about my grandfather, who was the very first African American to serve in the Labor Department as an assistant secretary of labor. And this was way back in 1954 under President Eisenhower. And
Yeah.
his experience in the government was brief, it was intense, and it didn't necessarily just end in a bed of roses.
Yeah.
And I had always wondered about what that would have been like for him. At the time, he was one of maybe two or three Black people in the entire upper levels of the federal government, which is
Yeah.
pretty weird, you know.
I told you guys, Carolyn has all kinds of cool people that are the
Eh,
tops of the tops in her
eh,
family. This is what I was talking about. I know some of these stories.
but
So you wrote
yeah,
that story of him and did the research and all of that.
exactly. I did that. And then that emboldened me to write another book, which I wrote about the women in my family who were all
Yeah.
musicians. And I wanted to
Equally
tell,
incredible to the men. Yeah.
well, and I wanted to tell a woman's story. So
Yeah.
that made me go and do more research and da da da. And after
Okay.
I finished those two books, I was sick and tired of writing about myself. I didn't want to write another word about me. I wanted to
You were
make,
done.
yeah, I wanted to make stuff up. So I'd always enjoyed murder mysteries. And so this is how I got into writing murder mysteries. And as
Okay.
you mentioned, I have written, this is my fourth murder
Yeah.
mystery. But this one by far is my best book ever. I have to say, I'm really happy with it. I have a great publisher who's really helped me. I had
Yeah.
a great editor who helped me go over it and stuff. And so, back to your question of how did I first get the idea? I think it was more, I'd always had these stories within me, but I
Hmm.
did not think that I had the ability to actually be a writer. And it was
Yeah.
only bit by bit as I started to actually write things that I realized, hey, you can do this.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, we don't know until we at
Yes,
least give it a go. And I love that, maybe you did start through a work avenue, which I think a lot of us will be more willing to undertake something if our
that's
career is
right.
like, will you write this?
That's
But
right. Yeah.
most of us have a hobby or a passion, or, some people it's more on the mystical side. For you, it's murder mysteries. So I think it's a great doorway in for anyone who's like, oh, I might want to write. And you've done all these short stories too. So someone could just start even with a short story, right?
I would actually recommend that.
Mm,
If there are people out there who like to write,
yeah.
first of all, I encourage you to not feel like, oh, this is for only certain people, or you need to have some kind of degree in writing
Yeah.
before you can. No, just write. Everybody has a story. And the deeper you get into your own uniqueness, the more interesting your story will be. Um, there's a lot of technique to writing, which
Mm-hmm.
takes time and practice, just like anything else. But the best way to get started is just do it. You don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to do it
Yeah.
or take a workshop before you can do it. I would say just sit down, maybe have a journal. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a lovely book. It's many years old by now, but still very good, called The Artist's Way by
I
Julia
do know that
Cameron.
book. Somebody gave me that book as a gift a few years
Yes,
ago. That's a
it's
great book.
it's a super popular book, but what she does is just kind of give you encouragement
Mm-hmm.
to move forward on your journey. If you have sort of that inner creator in you that's kind
Yeah.
of hiding in there. Um, and one of her suggestions is that you keep a journal and that you make yourself every day write 3 pages.
Hmm.
Just write. And do not go back and read it and edit
Yeah.
it, and just sit down, close your eyes, almost like automatic writing, and just write. Because what
Yeah.
you're doing is you're priming the pump,
Right.
and pretty soon those 3 pages will start to write themselves, even.
Oh, that's great. So, to your process, I guess One of the things I was wondering is when you write as a writer, because I think everybody does it maybe a little bit their own way. Do you imagine kind of looking through the eyes of the main character? Do you take more of that overarching perspective, sometimes called as the God perspective, or the
Mm.
I keep thinking of the Truman Show movie,
Yeah,
that like
yeah.
overarching perspective? Do you swap back and forth? How do you like to do it?
My books have all been written in the first person.
Yeah.
So that's just been what I've done. Maybe the next book, well, I can't. These next Psychics and Soul Food, there are going to be
Yeah.
3 books in this series. And by contract, they all have to be with the same character set in the
Okay, that
same
was one of my
place.
questions. So we're
That's
going to hear more about Nola and
more
her
Nola,
adventures.
more about Nola, more about Agate, Illinois, more
Okay.
about her aunt, the hoodoo woman,
See what
more
happens
about
to the
all
Wham
that.
Bam Club.
The Wham Bam Club, yes. So maybe after that, I may try writing in a more omniscient narrator kind of
Yeah.
point of view. But I found the first person to be, for me, the quickest and the easiest, because it'd be like me telling you a story. I would be, well, I did this and then I did
Yeah.
this, and oh, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. This happened. Then you're just writing that down.
Do you have a sense of, do you do any sort of like character development where you have a sense of the characters and flush
Yes.
them out a little before you're writing? Or do you kind of know who the characters are when you're sitting down to do the overall story?
Yes, I do. I actually spent quite a bit of time with these characters, thinking about, who they were. I write up a little bit, almost like a little bio on
Yeah.
especially the major characters,
Yeah.
who they are, where they come from, why they would
Yeah.
act the way they do, their little quirks and ticks. And
Yeah.
especially if you're writing a series, um, you want the characters to have enough meat on their bones that
Right.
people aren't completely sick of them after the first book. They need to be
Uh,
interesting. And I believe they also need to have room to grow. They need to
right.
evolve.
Yeah, well, there's a continuity I think that needs to be there. I
Mm-hmm.
always think of it, I think because some of my background's in acting, so I think of it from like a script reading perspective. And there's some techniques in acting when you're going to read for a character where you, even if it's not there technically, but I'm making up a backstory back in the day, or
Right.
thinking, how would they react to this, or what's
Yeah.
their personal history. And it feels like the characters have all of that, even though, of course, there's not time in one book to understand all of their background. We get enough of it, and enough in the, particularly, I mean, I think with a lot of them, but I like Nola quite a bit. So it's like you get other flavors of her just in her response to something or non-response to something. Do you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So
I
those
do.
characters feel really fleshed out to me.
Oh, that's great. That was a big hope, because for me, when I read a mystery or I watch a movie or something, if I can't really connect to the characters, if they don't
Yeah.
feel real to me, sometimes there are some genres in which the characters are almost like paper cutouts that just do
Right.
things. He runs to the car and drives it, and then he's chased by 30 cars, and then they blow up something, but you never really have a sense that this is really a person with moods and different
Yeah.
feelings and things. So for me, I prefer a more character driven story. And as a writer, I did spend a lot of time making sure that my characters felt authentic to me.
There's a depth to them. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Sometimes that feels really surfacey. I don't know. I don't know how you magically manage to accomplish it in something that's not 1,000 pages to,
Right,
to really like
right,
get in there and make
right.
them feel fully developed. But they certainly do. Is there? something that really surprised you most as you started to uncover the characters? Did any of them really take on a life of their own in a way that you maybe didn't expect as you're adding the complexities, or reveal something unexpected as you wrote them?
Yes, yes, and I don't want to spoil anything for
Yes, don't,
people,
no spoilers, guys.
but I think particularly some of the minor characters, the woman who has the spiritualist, runs the seance,
Mm-hmm.
there, she turns out to be kind of an interesting person and not quite what you might think at first.
Yes.
At
Will we see more of her as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be
To be
determined.
determined.
Yeah, to be determined.
Oh,
There'll
interesting.
definitely be more psychic stuff, that I can promise. But I think the next book goes in a little bit of a different direction.
Okay.
So I don't want to say too much, but
Yeah.
it's a little different, the same but different. And this is, of course, for all of you wanting to write, people out there, this is
Mm-hmm.
also a big challenge, because when you come with the next book in the series, it can't just be like the first book. It's got to
Yeah.
be different. And even though the characters are the same, they can't do the same things, just keep
Right.
doing. They have to evolve, they have to grow, they have to, and that is challenging for the
Yeah.
writer, because at the same time, if you change them too much, people are going to be, wait a minute, you said Nola always ate chocolate ice cream after, and now you have her eating like strawberry.
Yeah.
So it's a
Uh,
tightrope that you have to walk.
we, the audience, do sometimes get attached to our
Yeah,
characters being a certain
yeah,
way,
you do.
I'm almost feeling like, I'm pretty excited. I'm almost feeling like maybe we'll get some version of like a murder mystery White Lotus situation where we're going to
Yeah.
different places and experiences with our girl Nola, which is really, I
Well,
mean, only 21. She's got plenty of time to have lots of
she's young.
adventures.
She's still young. Yeah.
Did something in you, did you get the sense when you were writing this one that like, oh, okay, this is going to be a series? Is that something that you just felt inside, or was that more on the decision end?
I wanted to make it a series. First of all, if you're a writer and you're trying to sell something, a series is a little bit more saleable,
Hmm.
because the publisher, hopefully, their hope is that after they release this one, people will want more Nola, and then they're going to want, the next book and the next book and the next book. So it's a win-win for everyone. Um, that said, some people just write one book and that's it, and they sell it and that's it, and then they go back and they create a completely different book, and they
Yeah.
do, But I wanted this to be a group of three, and then we'll see how it goes. So there will be
Okay.
three psychics and soul food mysteries with the same characters, or at least the same major characters.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I feel like it's a perfect story to, either, the way I think of it is like either for like a Sunday reading when you just want to have a little lazy morning in bed with a cup of tea, or if you're darting to appointments and we all get stuck in waiting rooms or lines, or whether you have a digital or a tangible copy, to just kind of like, oh, okay, it's the kind of story that I felt like I could slip in and out of and know where I was and really get back in there pretty easily, which for me I really like a lot.
yeah. I tried to make it like that, and also that each chapter both wraps up a little bit, but also hooks you into the next chapter so that it
Yeah.
should follow. And that goes back to, I referred before to the technique of writing. There is a fair amount of technique to really making a story flow. And that's one of the challenges, to be able to just let there be as few impediments between the reader and the story as possible. That's my view anyway.
Is that something that you work out more in the editing on the back end? Because I've heard writers say you just got to write it, and don't, like you said earlier, don't edit it as you're doing it, write it all and then pass it over to a great editor and let them try to help design some of the breaks and omit some of the, and then you go back and do a second round yourself. Is that sort of how it works for you?
Well, at first, in order to sell the book, you need to be your own very rigorous editor. And I'm blessed to have a husband who is also a really good writer, and he's also extremely particular. So he went through it a couple times, and then I have other writer friends who I've exchanged books with. They've read mine and I've read. So I sent it out to like a small group of beta readers who made suggestions. And then I went back and edited. And then I sent it to my agent, and she went through it and edited. And then I sent it to the publisher. He edited, sent it back to me. I edited. Then I sent it to a further different level reader who did another edit. And then finally, they do a copy edit where they go through and just look for grammatical mistakes or gross inaccuracies. They checked all my, that was the first thing she said. Is this agate a real place? I can't find it on the map,
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that part of it that people maybe don't realize when they're entering in. It really is a labor of love to create this work into the world. It's not, like most things creative, it's not a few hours long process.
It took me 5 years.
Wow.
Years. And part of that was that I wrote it and then I was having trouble selling it, which is another whole story. And it was a long slog to find the right agent who could appreciate the book and get behind the book. And then she was able to get it in front of the publisher that I currently have.
Yeah, the right people.
But it's more than a notion. And I will say,
for sure,
if you like to write, writing is...
Sorry, I was just squeaking around.
Oh, no worries. I was afraid it was me.
No, it was me.
Writing is not for the faint of heart. And it is also not for the impatient. If you're an impatient person that needs to see results right away, maybe you write, but you don't write to be published.
Have a blog. Yeah,
have a blog.
Or something.
Exactly.
Start there.
Because it's a long, long thing. And that's why, to get back to your point, if you feel like you want to write fiction, think about writing short stories. Yeah. It's a lot easier to get a short story published. You mostly don't need an agent to submit your story to magazines. And there are a lot of online magazines or anthologies that have different themes, and they'll put out call for submissions, and you can offer your story there. And that's a great way to share your work.
Yeah, I think it's a different process for everyone. And sometimes it is those breadcrumbs as we move forward and see if something's a good fit for us. I do have just a couple more questions about the book and the process.
You are amazing.
You're so funny.
Yeah.
I'm just excited about it. I think it was phenomenal. I'm really excited for the next one, of course. And I was like, I wonder if Carolyn could tell us anything about the next one. I figured you probably wouldn't be able to. But I feel like you already did the spirit speed round, so we had time for a little bit extra. I had a couple of just kind of fun questions. One of them you sort of answered already. It was, when you write, do you look or do you listen to music as you're working and as you're writing? And if so, I was wondering if there's a piece of music, you don't, but is there a piece of music that you really relate to Nola's character? Is it one that you
Oh,
wrote?
yeah, I wrote songs for that
Yeah.
purpose, but because I'm also a musician, I can't listen to music and do something
Oh,
else.
interesting.
Yeah, because it's like my mind gets involved with the music. I
Yeah.
start, oh, well, I wonder why he used the trumpet there instead of the
You're too
saxophone, or
technical.
why did he go to that chord change instead of here? Or
Yeah,
I can't just have the music just be like background. So when
that makes sense.
I write. And then when I do music, I do music. So they're like
Yeah.
kind of separate. Um, but since part of the book, there are literal song lyrics in the book, I thought it would
Yeah.
be fun because they're at the Wham Bam Club, right?
Yeah.
What are they listening to? Well, naturally, they're listening to blues. Some of those lyrics are pretty gut bucket, pretty racy.
Yeah, it's very racy, some of it.
Yeah,
Fun.
well,
Unexpected, but
fun.
fun.
And
Yeah.
so when I wrote those lyrics, I did in my mind hear the music that would go under them. And so that's why I did end up recording three songs that are
Yeah.
related to the book that you can download for free. I'm going to give you the link.
I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
put it in the show notes with your website.
Okay.
I couldn't imagine you doing it any other way. Even when I was reading the lyrics or hearing them in the story, I was like, oh, you definitely were hearing a song to
Yeah.
this. And I'm
Yeah.
sure even ambiently as you're going through the experience and rereading it, I'm sure there's some version of soundtrack or other things that are happening,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
so
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
This is a strange question, maybe, but I hope it's a fun one. If you could sit down at the Wham Bam Club for one night only, spiritually or otherwise, who would you want at the piano and who would you want to be sitting next to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you what. There are some great characters. I'm not going to go into them. There are several gangsters,
Yes.
including a kind of handsome, sexy one.
Yes.
There are a couple of very corrupt politicians. They might be interesting. They probably could take you out for a good time. Um, but on the piano, I want to say I want to be on the piano.
I
I
knew you
think,
were going to say
yes,
that. Yeah.
I want to play. And the band that they have at the Wham Bam Club is a good band, whatever else they've got going on. The
Yeah.
music is good, and I think it would be super fun to be part of that for like one night.
Well, and I think historically, we know through all the documentaries that most jazz artists of the time were incredible artists and also had complicated other stuff going on.
Well, you put it very kindly. Yes, they were.
Sometimes,
There
right?
was a reason why musicians were considered to be kind of, along with actors and
Yeah.
any of those kind of show folk, they were pretty much the bottom of the barrel. They were not the hoity-toities of society by any means.
Yeah. Well, and it's a little scandalous to even be there. So, kind of to your earlier point, yeah, it is this strange mix of unusual bedfellows, can we
Yes,
say, that
that's what makes it fun.
wouldn't be seen together maybe on Main Street, but are none of them can talk about who's there and who's not there because they're not supposed to be there.
Nobody's supposed to be there. The whole
It's
place was completely illegal, yet
yeah.
operating in broad view of the law and all that. So,
Well, and it sets it perfectly for us to have Nola as the prime investigator here because, sometimes when things happen in places like this, maybe the main investigators aren't investigating too hard and got to take on the case ourselves, right?
There you go. Well, Joy, I think you have captured the spirit of it for sure.
Okay, I've just one more question for you.
Okay.
What is the kind of wind of inspiration that's moving you towards this next novel? Is there a breezy vibe that you're feeling as you move into it? Is there more of like a mysterious air that we can be expecting to feel around the corner? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, what a
What can
great
I know,
question. You're
Carolyn?
so fun.
Uh,
The truth is, the second book has already been written,
awesome.
because that's the way the book business works. Who
Good for
knew?
you, though. 5 years. That's a great. You got a lot done in there.
Yeah, the second book will come out this time next year.
Oh,
So
yay.
I will say that it has the same characters, but part of what really interested me was some real life. I almost want to describe them as cult figures. There's a little
Mm,
bit of that going on in the book. Cult figures of the 1920s.
yeah,
So I'm not going to say too much,
that's
but
perfect.
Nola is, as usual, in the thick of things and up to her ears in trouble. So,
Accidentally getting herself nominated for things.
yeah,
Okay, I have one final question.
sure.
Uh, Nola's investigation requires her to trust her inner voice despite lots of external doubt, and
Mm,
sometimes I think many of us can struggle with that.
right.
What do you hope readers take away about things like self-trust, especially in the face of everything happening in that story and now?
Great question. I did think about this, and I did want her to be, to some degree, even though she's a fictional character,
Yeah,
I do want her to be kind of an inspiration of speaking up for herself, being a little bit feisty, not falling for the okey doke, or just
yeah.
because some male authority figure tells her something that she has to do it. And I would hope that readers would take away from that a little feeling of feeling empowered and a little feeling inspired and like, yeah, yeah, women, even back then, even under oppressive conditions,
Yeah.
people can do amazing things. And that's a little bit of the message.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing this work with us and being willing to talk to us all about it.
Oh,
Obviously, people can find everything at carolynwilkins.com, which I'll, of course, link in the show notes.
great.
Where else can we get this book? Is that the best way? Is that the only way?
This book, thanks to my wonderful publisher, this book
Yes.
is available, as they say, wherever books are sold. You can go to your local bookstore and request that they order it if they don't have it.
Awesome.
You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it uh, all kinds of those places.
Yeah.
And I will mention also there's an ebook available
Yep.
and there's an audiobook. So, Joy, if it wasn't that you had gotten a pre-order copy
Yes.
of the book, you could actually have had a real human read you the book.
I would much prefer that. Are you reading the book? Who's reading the
No,
book?
it's an actress.
Interesting. Maybe I'm going to re-listen to it. This
Well,
is the type of book I would re-listen to. I
oh,
highly
cool.
recommend, even if
Yeah.
someone just likes reading or for travel or for a fun gift. It's everything you want it to be. It's so delicious. And I really hope that you will come back and tell us about the next one before it's released.
You are the best. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for shining your light. And everyone, it is totally available right now. Murder at the Wham Bam Club by Miss Carolyn Marie Wilkins. Thanks for shining your light.
Thank you.
Well, what did you think of that conversation with amazing author, musician, medium, artist, and friend Carolyn Wilkins? Murder at the Wham Bam Club is such a fun, exciting book. I highly recommend it. Like I was saying, whether you are in a waiting room or having some kind of travel, or even just want to have a little relaxing time on a Sunday morning, it is the perfect book for that. Murder at the Wham Bam Club is available now, like Carolyn said, wherever you get your books. And you can also go to carolynwilkins.com, which I'll, of course, link in the show notes. I will also link those additional songs that she was telling us about that she created as she was writing the book, because there are some songs actually in the book, so we can hear the music itself. And Carolyn is quite modest, but she's an incredibly acclaimed musician, artist, among many other accolades. So she's such a special person, and I'm really grateful for her sharing her time with us yet again on the podcast. I'll also link that other episode that she did, which was the Akashic Records trance piano healing episode. So you actually receive a healing in that episode with her piano music that she's channeling. So that was a really cool experience as well. And in that episode, we talk all about Carolyn's mediumship, how she became a medium, her history, and all of that part of her story as well. So you can get to know her even more. And for me, that just makes anything I'm reading more delicious to get to know the author. So she said there is now an audiobook plus the hard copy plus the digital version, all available now. You can find them either at carolynwilkins.com or wherever books are sold. And again, I will link everything in the show notes. I'm so grateful for you being here with me today. Do you feel like you have a story inside of you that you want to write? Do you just enjoy reading other people's works? Are you starting to get a stirring about maybe what's next for you or what your soul's calling you to undertake? Stick around, because I have so much more coming up in the fall, exercises and opportunities and workshops and some really fun ways for you to start exploring some gifts of your own. So as always, thanks for being here with me today. Big hugs, lots of love from inside Spirit Speakeasy.